歡迎各位嚟到香港科技大學藝術中心同埋匠心會合辦1連4輯嘅音樂小錦囊古典音樂欣賞課程。我係你哋嘅主持李國旗。提到音樂欣賞咧，大家總會感到有啲困難嘅，覺得無從入手係嘛？我相信主要嘅原因咧係音樂嘅本質係一種好抽象嘅藝術，完全觸摸唔到。咁唯一能夠深入理解音樂嘅方法咧，就係不停咁聽，等聽到好熟啦。完全背到隻歌咁啦，咁先至可以開始着手慢慢去理解首音樂本身裏邊嘅嘢㗎。咁有見及此咧，我就為大家提供咗一個幾有趣味嘅方法嘅，就係將音樂同埋佢創作嘅同時期嘅藝術或者建築咧，係作出一個比較。由於藝術作品好似繪畫啦、壁畫啦、雕塑啦或者係建築咁咧，都係實物存在嘅，咁可以作為長時間嘅觀賞。甚至乎摸到添，咁我通過理解呢啲有實體存在嘅作品，咁舉一反三，咁希望咧就係能夠利用咁咧嚟到大家係會更加理解同時期音樂裏邊所要表達嘅嘢。呢個音樂小錦囊系列咧係由4個單元組成，每輯咧係15分鐘。我哋會順住歷史嘅次序，先介紹一啲大家並唔常接觸嘅歷史時期，例如被認為係古典音樂嘅起源係即係羅馬帝國滅亡後嘅6世紀到11世紀嘅中世紀黑暗時期啦。咁跟住咧，我哋會去到11至15世紀嘅歌德時期，再接住落嚟咧就係15到17世紀嘅文藝復興。咁最後咧，我哋會為大家介紹17至18世紀巴洛克時期嘅音樂㗎。咁希望喺短短15分鐘裏邊咧，我能夠引起大家對呢啲唔同嘅時期嘅歷史啦，同埋喺當代嘅藝術啦，特別係呢個時期嘅音樂咧嘅興趣嘅。
Before we actually enter the medieval period, let's take a look at the map of Europe in the prime time of the Roman Empire. In around the year 117, places including the present-day Mediterranean coasts, Spain, France, Italy, Greece, Israel, and Turkey were all parts of the Roman Empire, with the Mediterranean lying in the central part of the whole territory. The Roman Empire finally perished in the year 476, after more than 2 centuries in turmoil. After the fall of the Great, what happened to Europe and who took the power? The first successor of the Roman Empire was the Byzantine Empire, marked yellow here on the map. Earlier in the year 330, more than a century before the fall of the Roman Empire, the then Emperor Constantine moved the capital from Rome to Constantinople, marked with the cross on the map, to evade the continuous attack from different tribes in the surrounding areas. In this new capital, the many knowledgeable and wealthy Romans continued to flourish and paint the city with Roman civilization. Later on, due to its vicinity to the east, the empire also caught Oriental colors, adopted the Greek language, literature, as well as arts. Orthodox doctrines also prevailed in the church, and eventually, in the Middle Ages, the empire even broke its relationship with the Roman Pope's Latin Church. The second force which replaced the Roman Empire was the invaders. These newcomers formed villages and lived together, and eventually grew strong and became the present-day countries like Germany, France, and Spain. Considering the prosperity and stability of the Byzantine, one can't help but wonder why people often call the first 500 years after the fall of the Roman Empire the Dark Ages. First, the people living in these villages, as well as the Romans who stayed in Rome, were suffering from poor living conditions and poor health because of the cold weather and poor harvest caused by lack of technology. On the other hand, as an effective government was missing, safety became an imminent problem. life expectancy was greatly shortened, and the wise elders of the villages might be just in his 30s. Under these circumstances, people naturally turned to superstition in the natural force. In a world lack of money and resources, everyone, including the government, were illiterate. The result was obvious: the Dark Ages. The third party that replaced the Roman Empire was actually the Catholic Church that stayed in Rome. As most of the people in the Dark Ages were illiterate, while the Church had the need to make records, naturally they shouldered the responsibility to preserve civilization. In those days, monasteries were found in every European town, and it was actually the monks in these monasteries who saved the classics and Latin. The daily chores of those monks were twofold: manual labor and clerical work. They had to tend to farmlands, build and repair roads and bridges, and also make wine. Other than those, they also had to translate and copy the Bible and other ancient texts, including not only Catholic literature, but also secular passages like myths and heresy, in addition to preserve worldly knowledge like watchmaking, farming, and accounting. Now, let's listen to some music and get a glimpse of the musical features of the period. Please click on the link and listen to the clip for around 40 seconds. What do you think about the clip? I still remember once when I played such music in a talk, a gentleman in the audience's first response after listening was that the music sent chills down his spine. To be honest, I'm not confident in your falling in love with music from the Dark Ages immediately, for two main reasons. First, these are all religious music. If you do not share the same religious belief, you may not like it. Second, such music consists of monophonic melodies with contours matching those of the biblical texts in Latin, without any harmony or accompaniment. It is just too demanding to imagine an audience who are used to 5G mobile phones and Blu-ray discs being pleased to such monotonous sounds. However, in those days, such music was actually popular with the public. But why? Before answering the question, let us take a look at the architectural features of the church in the Middle Ages. What is special with this church? Do you agree it looks plain and austere? How about the apse? I'm sure you have noticed the thick stone walls of the church, as well as the crude-style windows, which were kept small to prevent the walls from collapsing. Generally speaking, this is what a medieval castle looks like. In fact, other than for masses and other religious services, the church was the last resort to protect the lives of the citizens. As the walls are so thick and the windows are so small, it is not difficult to imagine what the interior is like. Exactly. Very dark and filled with reverberation. When we sing in a room with high levels of reverberation, the music should also remain simple. As a result, it is best for presenting pieces with monophonic melodies, without harmony nor accompaniment. As the interior of the church is usually dark, it has to be lit up by candles. When the walls are decorated with mosaics, and better still, with gold leaves, the saints will be illuminated by the candlelight. After a long day of labor work, when the desperate believers stepped into the church and were welcomed by the brightly lit saints and the simple tunes of chants and their echoes, they could not but be awed and uplifted. In this way, the church was literally the asylum of these believers, who would, in return, donate everything they could to the church. For your information, I'd also like to share 2 facts about medieval music here. We generally believe that the chants sung in masses were passed orally from one generation to the next, and were actually originated from the era of the Roman Empire. During the 6th century, Bishop Gregory the First announced that he had heard the voice of the Lord through a dove, the Holy Spirit sending music to him. Whether you choose to believe in this saying, Gregory the First was literally the one who contributed to the organization and categorization of these chants, and thus they are also often called Gregorian chants. As the church developed and grew, chants also became abundant, and it would be too difficult to memorize and pass on all of those orally. The friars had to create other means to record the music. This illustration shows one of the music notations they used. The red line in the middle represents a certain pitch, and the wriggling dots above and below it show the relatively higher or lower notes. Then you may ask, how much higher or lower? I'm afraid only those friars who actually knew how to sing those chants could enlighten us, as these early notations are only there to remind the singers, but not the actual music scores. So if you took the score to another church with another group of friars, they might also have no clues about the actual melody recorded.
好啦，呢一輯我哋就先講到呢度先。希望大家喺初步認識咗中世紀早期嘅情況之後呢，唔會再覺得嗰陣時嘅音樂呢一聽就令到你心寒啊！咁更加好嘅呢，就係大家開始能夠欣賞呢個時期宗教歌曲裏邊所蘊藏嘅淳樸同埋美妙之處。咁當大家進入到下一輯晨曦初現嘅時候呢，就好容易會感受到人類無論喺藝術、建築同埋音樂呢幾方面嘅領域呢，都係踏出咗幾大嘅一步。下次再見。